Have you ever wondered why Jesus, the Son of God, never took a wife? Many great men before him, men chosen by God, had wives. Some had many. Yet when we examine their lives, we see a painful truth. Many of them fell because of the very women they embraced. Let us open our hearts as we journey through the Scriptures and uncover why Jesus chose a different path. The Bible is filled with mighty men who were anointed, powerful, and chosen for great things. But let us see how their weakness for women led to their destruction. Let's look at Samson, a strong man who fell in the lap of a woman. Samson was no ordinary man. He was set apart from birth, a Nazarite, chosen to deliver Israel from the Philistines. His strength was unmatched. No army could stand against him. But despite his strength, Samson had one fatal weakness: women. He fell in love with Delilah, a woman who did not love him but sought to destroy him. She pressed him daily, wearing down his resolve until he revealed the secret of his strength. And what did she do? She cut his hair and handed him over to his enemies. This mighty man, who once tore lions apart with his bare hands, was now blind, bound, and grinding grain in a Philistine prison. What swords could not do, a woman did effortlessly. Secondly, Solomon, the wisest man who became a fool. Solomon was the wisest man to ever live. When God asked him what he wanted, he did not ask for riches, victory, or long life. He asked for wisdom, and God granted him wisdom like no other. But what happened to this great king? Women. Solomon loved many foreign women, Moabites, Edomites, and Sidonians. These women turned his heart away from God. He, the man who built the temple of the Lord, the man who spoke with God directly, ended up worshiping idols. The wisest man became a fool, all because of his uncontrolled desire for women. What about David? A man after God's heart, but not after his own desires. David was called a man after God's own heart. He was a warrior, a worshiper, and a king chosen by God. But even he was not exempt from this deadly weakness. One evening, as his army went to war, David stayed behind. He saw Bathsheba, a beautiful woman, bathing, and desire consumed him. He took her, knowing she was another man's wife. When she became pregnant, he tried to cover his sin by calling her husband home, and when that didn't work, he ordered the man's death. David, a man of God, became a murderer, all because of a woman. Why Jesus chose a different path? Brethren, Jesus did not come to repeat the mistakes of the past. He saw what happened to great men before him. He understood the dangers of desire. His mission was clear: to do the will of his Father. A woman, though a blessing, can also be a distraction. And for a man with a divine calling, distractions can be deadly. That is why Jesus did not marry. He did not allow his heart to be swayed. He remained focused on the purpose for which he was sent. Brethren, let us not be deceived. The same traps that ensnared Samson, Solomon, and David still exist. The world we live in today is filled with temptations, distractions, and enticements that can lead even the strongest among us astray. Let us turn to the words of Jesus himself. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Matthew 26, verse 41. Jesus understood the power of the flesh, our desires, our passions, and our weaknesses. He knew that even the greatest among us could fall if we are not careful to guard our hearts. Another man that fell due to his indulgence in women is King Ahab. We see another example in the story of King Ahab, the ruler of Israel. Ahab was not a man of great virtue, but he had a heart that could be easily swayed. And who swayed him? Jezebel, his wife. Jezebel was a woman of great power, but she was wicked. She led Ahab into idolatry and evil, causing Israel to fall into sin. Ahab the king became a puppet in the hands of a woman who worshipped false gods. His downfall came not from war or poverty, but from the weakness of his heart, his failure to lead and protect the kingdom from the influence of a wicked woman. Brethren, even a king like Ahab, who had the authority to rule a nation, was brought low because he allowed a woman to turn his heart away from the living God. Not forgetting Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, inherited the throne after his father's death. But Rehoboam's heart was not set on wisdom, as his father's had been. He surrounded himself with advisors who told him what he wanted to hear, not what he needed to hear. And what happened to him? The people of Israel rebelled. and the kingdom was divided. But it wasn't just the advisors that led Rehoboam astray. His mother, Naamah, was an Ammonite, and the influence of foreign women continued to plague his reign. Instead of remaining faithful to God's wisdom, Rehoboam was pulled in different directions by the very people he allowed into his life. His reign was short-lived and marked by failure. The kingdom he inherited was torn apart, not by enemies from without, but by the desires and choices he made within. A call to great men. Guard your heart. Jesus, in his perfect wisdom, did not marry because he knew the cost of a divided heart. His mission was to save the world, and he understood that to be fully devoted to the Father's will, he could not allow earthly distractions to derail him. This is not to say that marriage is wrong. No, marriage is a beautiful gift from God. But for those called to greatness, there is a higher calling. For those who are chosen to lead, to teach, to build, or to serve in mighty ways, the question must be asked, what will you do with your heart? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6:21. Jesus invested his heart fully in the work of the Father. He never allowed a woman to take his heart in a way that would interfere with his purpose. For a great man, the heart must be guarded. How can we avoid the mistakes of the great men before us? 1. Keep your heart guarded. The first step is to recognize the power of the heart. As Solomon wrote in Proverbs, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. Do not let your desires control you. When we allow temptation to take root in our hearts, it leads to sin, and sin leads to destruction. 2. Stay focused on your purpose. Jesus knew his purpose, to do the will of his Father. He never wavered from that mission. Greatness comes not from seeking pleasure or power, but from dedicating oneself to a higher calling. 3. Surround yourself with wise counsel. 4. Know your weaknesses. Just as Samson knew his strength was in his hair, but his weakness was in his love for women, we too must recognize where we are most vulnerable. If a particular temptation has the power to lead you astray, avoid it. Protect yourself from situations that could cause you to stumble.